When speaking our native language, we English speakers tend to insert an audible separation between certain words with something called a glottal stop, which is represented with this symbol that looks a bit like a question mark. A glottal stop is produced by pinching the back of the throat closed, thereby cutting off the airflow. You can observe the glottal stop by pronouncing the exclamation, "uh-oh." A glottal stop precedes each of the syllables, causing them to be pronounced with a little burst of air. And importantly, the glottal stop produces an audible separation between the two syllables, uh-oh. Depending on the dialect of English, the glottal stop may also be used as a variant of certain phonemic sounds. We're not going to get into the details of that in this video. What matters to us here is that the glottal stop is used in almost all dialects of English to audibly separate certain words and break up utterances into smaller pieces. And when used this way, we English speakers are usually completely unaware that we're using a glottal stop at all. Why am I bringing this up in this video? How does this relate to the study of Spanish? Well, Spanish does not employ glottal stops pretty much at all, and certainly not to audibly separate words. There are certain minority dialects or sociolects of Spanish that employ the glottal stop in very limited contexts, but there is no dialect of Spanish that uses it broadly to audibly separate words the way we do in English. One significant consequence of this fact is that in ordinary spoken Spanish, words just run together. Whole phrases are pronounced as if they were a single long run-on word. This can make it challenging for native English-speaking students of Spanish to understand native speech, even when they know all the words the speaker is using, even if they would have had no problem reading and understanding the same phrases. It can also make it challenging for students who've become accustomed to one dialect of Spanish to understand some other dialect. Differences in pronunciation of individual sounds and differences in rhythm and intonation seem greater when there's no audible separation between any of the words. With regard to today's video on syllabification, the absence of glottal stops contributes to something you hear me say in a lot of my videos, that Spanish rules of pronunciation apply across word boundaries. And what's true for previous pronunciation topics that we've covered is also true for syllabification. These rules apply across word boundaries. For example, if we take the word pair los hombres and break it up into syllables, we get lo sombres. Observe that phonetically the S of los comes at the beginning of the second syllable of the utterance, which is the first syllable of hombres, exactly as if the two words were one single word, los hombres. And this principle applies not only to word pairs, but larger phrases, whole sentences, utterances of any length between pauses. It also applies to all Spanish pronunciation rules I know of. You hear me say it in most of my videos. Spanish pronunciation rules apply across word boundaries. Now, native English-speaking students of Spanish would probably pronounce this word pair as los hombres, with S coming at the end of los and a glottal stop at the onset of the second word. And while that would certainly be understandable to native Spanish speakers, it wouldn't sound quite right to them. More significantly, in other instances, the use of a glottal stop between words may prevent English speakers from properly applying pronunciation rules that apply across word boundaries, giving their Spanish a foreign-sounding accent, even when they're capable of pronouncing individual sounds and even individual words correctly. This habit of using glottal stops to separate words can be very difficult for native English speakers to break, because we don't do it consciously. We don't think of the glottal stop as an actual sound in this context. Since we're not aware we're doing it, it doesn't occur to us that we should stop doing it, and we don't really know what we can do to stop doing it. My advice to students is this: read out loud in Spanish a little every day. Read slowly and carefully and pay attention to joining your words together fluidly. Don't use glottal stops to separate words in Spanish, and practice applying pronunciation rules across word boundaries. If you've forgotten how to do that for a particular rule, go back and watch the relevant video and refresh your memory. By now I have a video on pretty much every phonological rule in Spanish. Just like anything else, you can do this. It'll just require a little thoughtfulness and practice. Alright, this is the conclusion of our discussion on Spanish syllabification. If you've learned something from this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And as always, if you have any questions regarding the Spanish language, please ask in the comments of any of my videos. I'd be happy to consider making a special video to answer your question.